Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm with Gary Cookson today, and we're going to be talking about his book, Making Hybrid Working Work, a practical guide for business success. Now, before I get you to introduce yourself, Gary, I really enjoyed this. And I was just about to tell you this before we went live. There's a lot of books on this which were written during lockdown. And this doesn't seem to, this is post-COVID.
Yeah.
So this is using all of the experiences that we had. And I really want to go in and talk about some of the things, but it's a post-lockdown real world view about hybrid work. And I really enjoyed it.
That's good to hear.
Gary, tell everybody where they can find you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for letting me come on, Tim, and hello to everybody who's watching this. My name is Gary Cookson, and I'm the director of Epic HR. You can find me on the organisation's website, epichr.co.uk. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Threads and on Blue Sky, Gary_Cookson.
Excellent. So what was the inspiration behind the book?
That one or the series that I've written?
This one.
Okay. Well, that one came as a result of conversations that arose from my first book. My first book was one of those books that you just mentioned, written during lockdown, reflecting on what was happening to us during that time. And it was written for HR directors, HR managers who were trying to redesign their people practices for a virtual world. And that was all well and good. But the conversations I had after that were like, yeah, we like that. But there was one particular chapter in that book that we need you to do some more thinking on. Can you do some more research on? And that was all about how organizations themselves need to adapt and align their structures, cultures, leadership behaviors, the whole organizational system. How do we actually make hybrid working work? Yes, we know how to do recruitment virtually. Yes, we know how to deliver virtual training sessions, but what about the rest of it? How does the rest of the organization need to align? So that led me to think, well, maybe there's more to it than I've written down so far, and I'll go away and write a second book.
Because you refer to the first book quite a lot in the book, don't you, in terms of the
yeah.
So what do you define as hybrid success?
Hybrid success, I think it's a really difficult thing to pin down, and even understanding what hybrid working is per se is not an easy thing to define, because it means different things to different people. There's no one size fits all, as mentioned in the book, and therefore hybrid success really depends on what you want it to be. It can be different things to different organizations. Some that I've researched and worked with define it purely in terms of productivity, performance, and that's okay. Some people define it in terms of its impact on employees, well-being, work-life balance, engagement, retention, that kind of thing. Some organizations base it, their success, on the corporate social responsibility, sustainability agenda, things like that. And that's okay too. So there's lots of different measures, but at least half the organizations I work with don't try to measure the success of hybrid working, and they're okay with that. So success is a really, really broad and hard to define term.
We had Morgan's just made a comment saying this sounds very much like the book Philip Van Hoot wrote about the evolution of work.
And maybe it does. Maybe it does. My focus has been slightly different in that regard, but no doubt drawing on some very similar themes and experiences.
One of the things that you say, it comes across in the book, is that you make the point that everybody is different. Every person is different.
Yeah.
So my partner's 29-year-old likes going to an office because he likes sociability. I don't like going to an office because it gives me an extra 2 hours in the day.
Yeah.
And I've got elderly parents. So you've got all of these different people. You may have children. Everybody's got their own different circumstances.
Yeah, that's right.
And everybody for that, some people want an office to go to. Some people don't want an office. Some people would like to have an office to go for a couple of days. And you actually talk in the book about how it's actually the people in the organization that can have an impact on how the hybrid or how hybrid works. And you actually say, go and talk to the people.
Yeah, because I think if you're going to make hybrid working work, you need to start at the bottom and work your way up. Starting at the top with the vision from the executives is never likely to account for all those individual circumstances that you mentioned and all the different ways in which work is done and the nature of the tasks themselves. It's going to apply, if you do it top down, a one size fits all approach to work when work has never been like that. So far better to understand the work itself and the individuals doing it and try to balance all the different, sometimes conflicting and sometimes convergent needs that they have, and build it from the bottom up, reflecting all of those things. So yes, it has to be that way if you're going to make it work.
So what are the common mistakes that people make?
Well, there would be one, applying a one size fits all approach to it. If you look at the most common hybrid working approach, which is 3 days here, 2 days there, or a variation of it, it's a fixed hybrid approach. And it sounds reasonable. It sounds like it's quite an attractive thing. And it might be if you've got some thought behind it, if you've actually worked out that that's the best approach to do. But if you've simply done finger in the air and looked at what some other organizations are doing and thought, here is the easiest thing to do. Let's tick the box on hybrid and this is our approach. Then you're wrong if you think you've solved it by just applying that 3-2 or a similar split. You've not solved it at all. You've applied a one size fits all approach to work, and work is different for everybody. You and me, Tim, we might do the same job. We might sit side by side on the days we're on site, but we do our job in very different ways. And on the days we're remote, we do it in very different environments, with very different demands on our time. So we have to reflect that in the hybrid working approach for the organization. So there would be one way of making a mistake. Another mistake organizations make is to base it on the beliefs, opinions, and experiences of a very small number of people at the top of the organization. You don't need to go far on social media or into the media itself to find examples of this. Every week, there's some new senior leader sharing their opinion on what remote work does and what hybrid working does for their organization. And that's okay. It's all right to have an opinion, and that needs bringing into the mix as well. But when you impose your opinion on everybody else who doesn't share the same characteristics as you, who hasn't had the same experiences as you, that way trouble lies. So another mistake is using the opinion of one person. And I say person, it's usually a man, and it's usually a white man at
It's
that.
usually a white man, yes.
Yeah, and it's usually a white man of a certain age too. So person, perhaps not the right label. We could actually be more specific. But applying that viewpoint and applying it to everybody else is a mistake as well. Third biggest mistake is thinking again that once you have implemented your hybrid approach and decided what that is, whether that's team by team, individual by individual, or a one size fits all, whatever you've done, thinking that once you've done it, that's the end of it. And it's not. You can't leave hybrid working to chance. You can't imagine but saying to somebody, work 2 days here, 3 days there, that's just going to work all right. They need guidance. They need support. Managers need support. Teams need guidance. And there's a big L&D ask as a result of this to reshape what work is and get people comfortable and competent working within that environment. So those are three main mistakes.
So Morgan's made a comment about culture, and I actually wanted to come to culture. So that was well timed, Morgan. Thank you. How do you create a strong culture with people when they're in different locations, they're working from home? How do you do that?
Well, there's lots of ways, and we should point out that there's plenty of organizations that have only ever been remote and have never struggled with this. They've always had a culture, and culture doesn't come from a physical location. Physical location can in some ways enhance culture, particularly if the design and the ergonomics of the physical location are done deliberately to enhance that culture. But if you are, let's say you're religious, then maybe you go to a place of worship, a church or somewhere similar like that. But if you didn't go to that place, that doesn't mean you're not religious. It doesn't mean you have no faith. It doesn't mean you don't have the same understanding and beliefs as those who do go there. It's just that you display that in different ways. So just as religion isn't about a physical building, nor is culture. Culture is about relationships. Culture is about purpose. Culture is about lots of other things. There's lessons we can apply from our personal life here. And I talk about this in our book. If you think, Tim and Morgan, about your close friends and your family. Now, you don't live with all of them. You live with some of them, but most of them you don't see day to day, and some of them you don't see even month to month. It's a while in between those times. And when you get together with those people, you do it for purpose. There's a celebration, a wedding, a birthday, something like that. And you all know in advance when you're going to get together. You all know in advance why you're getting together and what you're going to do when you're together. And because of those things, you feel connected to those people. And there's chat beforehand about what's going to happen and how much you're looking forward to it. And when it happens, you all have a great time. And then after that, you keep the relationships going through digital means on WhatsApp group chats and Facebook Messenger. And there's friends of yours that you've not seen for years, but you still feel connected to because of the way you manage that relationship digitally. That proximity is not just a physical concept, it's an emotional concept. And you feel close to people, you feel close to an organization when you are emotionally in proximity to them, not necessarily physically. You can have both, and one doesn't necessarily matter more than the other, but the emotional proximity is what matters. So if we send people into an office building to be on Teams calls all day, to not be talking to the people around them all day, then that's not going to create culture either. When you bring people on site, you've got to get them emotionally close to people. Now, there's all different ways you can do that, but you can do that just as easily remotely as you can face to face. It's about shared purpose, connection to the work of the team, connection to the values of the organization. It's about understanding the way that your work impacts other people. It's about shared likes, shared dislikes, shared hobbies, shared pastimes, those types of things. And in our personal lives, we are skilled at finding people who share the same stuff as us and becoming close to them. And that's often done on social media, and it's often done in other ways too. And it's done in your family. You might have family the other side of the world, but you still know exactly what's going on for them despite not seeing them, and vice versa. And yet when we get through the factory gates or the office door, we tend to imagine that the only way we can be close to people is when we can see, hear, and smell them. That's not the case.
We've had some comments coming in. My friend Ross Jolly says most companies haven't thought through their hybrid options and look to others in the sector for inspiration. Backs up what you said, Gary. You need to consider your own business needs. Onboarding new personnel is very difficult. How can they embed that in organizations and get support they need? Morgan very kindly makes another comment about his view is that middle management is an issue. And a guest that I have coming on in a bit, and in a couple of weeks' time, Irene Yam says, I'm totally impressed that you called out companies that cite articles and quotes from white males back to the company to make decisions. Thank you for bringing this up, Tim and Gary.
Yeah. Can I respond to a couple of those points?
Yeah. Please do.
Irene, yes, there are loads. And if you look at all the companies that are doing the RTO mandates, return to office mandates, the one thing that connects all of them is the demographics of the chief executive. That's one thing that connects them. So there's that. There's lots of research that shows that. Going back to Morgan's point about the seeing management style, I often compare such people to it's a sensory experience. It's a sensory experience, face-to-face management. If that's the style you grew up with, then you see, you hear people. The inputs you need as a leader come to you through your eyes and ears. And that's fine for that way of working. But the moment you introduce any element of remote or hybrid working, you're depriving those leaders of that sensory input. And much like if any of us here, we lost our sight, we lost our hearing, we suffer loss and we struggle to adjust to that. But you can overcome that. You can adapt, you can unlearn, you can relearn. But that's the challenge, that leaders going from that style of management, the sensory-based management, to a more digital form of management, that's the challenge that awaits them. And that requires them to unlearn and relearn stuff. And a large focus of my work is working with leaders one-on-one or with groups to help them to do that, to understand that when you are managing a hybrid team, you've got way more data about what your team is doing than you could ever get by just using your eyes. And the analogy I use, if you've seen the Matrix films, Tim, you'll know that in one of the films, Keanu Reeves' character, the lead character Neo, he goes blind. And he struggles in the real world, but in the virtual reality AI dominated world of the Matrix, it's okay when he's blind because he sees data, he sees the code in the Matrix. And that's the analogy I'll use for moving from a sensory style of management to a digital style of management. It can easily be done. So thank you, Morgan, for bringing that one up. And the point about onboarding people, which Irene's talked about as well, is a good one. How do we do that? And Ross mentioned it as well. How do we do that? We can do it quite easily. Buddy systems, by the way, Irene, are really good no matter what the modality might be, whether that be face-to-face, hybrid, remote. Buddy systems are fantastic at building friendships and bonds between people. And we know that that proximity is what matters and connects people to culture. So good practice in general, regardless of hybrid. But even more important when you are remote, to start thinking about how you envelop the new starter in your organizational culture. How do you connect them to people like them? So if I go into an organization, it's a while since I've been in an in-house role, but if I did, then I want to know before I get there, who else supports Manchester United? I want to know who else's favorite TV program is Taskmaster. I want to know who else likes to go for a run first thing in the morning, because I want to spend time with my people. And I might not remember for ages what their name is because I'm rubbish with names. And I might not remember what their job title is, but I know what I share with that person and the relationships are there. So that kind of socialization aspect is critical where you haven't got the visual inputs to guide you. So that's a really important part, the socialization elements. And the better onboarding experiences focus heavily on that. So I think that's addressed Ross's point.
Yeah. I think so. Thank you for Gary. So what is it that managers need to learn to do this? Because I think it's you say in the book, we're going back to the white leader's opinion, that they have this playbook. We got up in the morning and we got on the train and we went to work, and that was what work was about.
Yeah, and it's not anymore. Work isn't somewhere you go. Work is something you do. For a large number of jobs and tasks, that's the case. There are still some that have to be done face to face, and there may always will be. But for a large number of people, work is something you do, and therefore we have to redefine the experience and redefine what productivity is. And we don't necessarily measure somebody's contribution now by their inputs, how long they're sat at a specific desk in a certain office. That's not the right way of doing it anymore. What we need to measure is not just outputs, but more likely outcomes. And outcomes are not necessarily related to the inputs that got a person to that point. Outputs might be, outcomes are something entirely different. That then opens up possibilities to change the working week completely, to redefine how work is done, to look at how we integrate technology into that, but also how we flow work around the team and around individual circumstances to make that happen. So the skill set for managers there, but more than just managers, for the entire team, is to have an organizational design and development skill set or mindset to think about organizational systems and the interconnectedness of things, to re-engineer processes, to look at how we use data and how work flows around a team and how around an organization, how communication is impacted by different work happening at different times, to redesign work along asynchronous lines. And these are really interesting skill sets for managers to develop. Some will have them. Some will be lucky that they've just got them naturally. They're the really lucky ones. but a large swathe of managers simply don't have those skills. And you could ask them to manage a remote and hybrid team, and they might be okay. But my view is the chances of that are somewhere between slim and none. So it's far better to not leave that kind of stuff to chance, to consciously reboot leadership development and focus on the skills that a manager now needs in the modern world of work: team dynamics, and we talk about using technology right, and how we understand processes and bottlenecks and pain points in the employee experience. These are all things that are critical for a hybrid working team.
Gary, thank you so much. As a Liverpool fan, I was so pleased that you came on and talked about Manchester United.
It's been a tricky year.
So your book, Making Hybrid Working Work, A Practical Guide for Business Success, is a fantastic book. I really enjoyed it. And I hope people that have watched this have seen your passion and your knowledge and know that actually it comes out in the book. It really does.
Good. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. And where can people find you?
Again, you can find me on epichr.co.uk, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, or Threads, where I'm Gary_Cookson.
Excellent. And of course, I forgot to say, but you could always buy the book on Amazon.com or KoganPage.com.